Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our first conversation about video recording. This is Jennifer Chamberlain Salaun, and Jennifer is a PhD candidate here in the School of Nursing, Midwifery and Nutrition, and Jennifer's undertaking a grounded theory study. We thought that it would be useful to have a conversation about methodology and the difference between methodology and methods, and hopefully this will give you some insight into some of the key points that you need to be looking for in your readings this week. So, Jennifer, over to you. Jennifer's got some questions for me.
Well, I guess, what is the difference between method and methodology?
Very important. It is a big difference, isn't it? And that's one of the things that you learnt when you started your PhD.
I think in lots of the literature, people use the words interchangeably, which is very confusing.
That's absolutely right. So when we talk about methodology, I pulled out a quote from our friend Thomas Schwandt. And Thomas Schwandt has actually written the Dictionary of Qualitative Inquiry, but his definition about methodology is a pretty useful one. He says that it's a particular social scientific discourse. So it's a way of acting, thinking and speaking that occupies the middle ground between discussions of method, which are procedures and techniques, and discussion of issues in the philosophy of social science. It still sounds a bit complicated, though.
It does. I mean, the procedure part of method, that makes sense. But can you explain methodology a bit more?
Okay, so a methodology is really, I suppose, the lens that a researcher uses when they're looking at the research problem that they've got. One of the key issues that you need to think about in methodology is, first of all, is what research question have you got? And then thinking about what type of outcome do you want to get out of your study. So different methodologies will produce different research outcomes. So that's an important facet to think about in relation to methodology. So you need to understand some of the methodologies before you can actually make some decisions about what type of research design is going to best answer your question. So, for instance, say you wanted to investigate the lived experiences of rural nurses who are caring for people who are dying in their community.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is the topic of one of our other PhD students' studies, Anne Aiken. So phenomenology, the methodology of phenomenology, is interested in examining lived experience. So it's not actually interested in saying, well, I want to come up with a generalisable truth, or I want to go and interview, 15 nurses, and then I want to come up with one position that they all agree with. What a phenomenologist would say is actually each one of the 15 nurses is going to have a slightly different story to tell, and I'm quite happy to actually use big chunks of that data to illustrate my analysis of a particular issue.
Okay, that makes it a bit clearer.
Not that much more clearer, still some more thinking to be done about it. So if you were to use, say you ask another question, your question, okay, so what's your research question, Jennifer?
The process of interaction between consumers and healthcare teams.
Okay, so the outcome of your study that you're looking for is some sort of model or explanation about how healthcare consumers interact with professionals that are caring for them. So because what you're looking for as an outcome is an explanation of a process, grounded theory is a natural fit for your research question.
Ah, yes, I see, because grounded theory is interested in processes.
So if you compared yourself to Anne Aiken, who's looking at a phenomenological study of lived experience, just like Anne Aiken, you're off doing interviews, aren't you?
Yes, I am indeed.
And Anne Aiken did lots of interviews too. How long do your interviews last?
About an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Oh, too long, but anyway. Don't take that as an example, class.
Keep it short, let me tell you, keep it short.
Keep it a bit shorter than that. However, if I had Anne Aiken sitting here and I was talking to her about the methods that she used in her study, she too would have gone and done an interview for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Okay, but when you're analysing your data, so that's the lens, the glasses you put on when you're looking at the transcript, the things you're looking for are quite different to the things that Anne Aiken is looking for.
Oh, I see. Yes, that makes a lot more sense now.
So the way you think about your data as a grounded theorist is quite different to the way you would think about your data as a phenomenologist.
Yes, I'm not interested. Well, I am interested in what the participants have experienced, but I'm looking for the process of how they interact, not each experience
And
on a personal level describing what they've experienced.
That's right.
Mm.
So say you were interested in culture. What type of methodology do you think you would use if it was a question of culture that you were asking? If your research question was one about culture?
Either anthropology or ethnography, I think.
So ethnography is a methodology, as you know, that's interested in answering research questions about culture. So when you go out into the field as an ethnographer and you're doing an interview with somebody, how long do you think your interview is going to go for?
Oh, gosh, they might go for a long time.
It go hour and a half, just like yours, just like Anne Aiken's, okay? But when you're asking questions as an ethnographer, when you're doing an interview,
yes,
what are you going to be asking about?
About their culture, yes, okay, that's much clearer.
So that's the difference between methodology and methods. So you and Anne Aiken and a mysterious ethnographer that's nameless, because we haven't got anybody at the moment, but if we did...
If you'd like to do ethnography, there's a position available.
There's that. But all of you would do interviews that may last an hour and a half. But the way that you think about the questions you want to ask the participant and then the way that you analyse the data is really different, depending on the methodological position that you've taken. So that's how methodology links philosophy, which is more general thinking about, I suppose, how do you describe this? What we consider to be truth or, the meaning of life, really, the meaning of being. All those things are those really highbrow ideas that philosophers think about. Methodology is really about how do you actually link some of those ideas to the concrete doing. Any other questions about methodology, Jennifer?
No, I think that really clarifies things. I think as well, though, researchers have to remember that there are lots of different methods, not just interviews, that we can use questionnaires or focus groups, or as I'm doing, digital storytelling workshops.
Also observation. You're doing some observation
also, because I think researchers sometimes think that interview is the only method.
That's right, certainly in qualitative research. So if you're a quantitative researcher, you would try and use methods that collected quantity, so numerical data about particular measurable outcome indicators, which is what you would set up at the beginning of your quantitative study. So if you are a quantitative researcher, methodologically, the school of thought that you would subscribe to is called Positivism, or in its very truest sense, Positivism. A positivist believes that there is an essential truth to the world that we can uncover. So in many ways, it's quite a fundamentalist position and quite akin to some religions that say, God is the truth and the light. So therefore, it's a very similar type of conceptual explanation, I suppose, about how does a positivist think. Post-positivists think there is one truth out there, but as human beings, we can only ever imperfectly understand that truth. So there's a caveat on on their research outcomes.
Okay.
But there are particular ways of setting up a quantitative study that try and ensure consistency in the data, and also the fact that you've controlled for as many outside influences, or what we call extraneous variables, as possible, and impacting on the findings. And what you want to do is come up with some set of findings that you can then, in fact, either use as a description of a particular phenomenon, or that you can extrapolate some generalisations to the wider population around. And of course, when we think about drug therapy and we think about interventions, medical interventions, we do want to be able to test those interventions against a large number of people to see whether or not they're going to have any adverse impact on people before we, say, introduce a new drug to the wider community. So, of course, quantitative research and post-positivism as a methodology has a place in research.
It does indeed.
It does. It just seeks to answer different questions. So I think the take-home messages about methodology are: the methodology has to fit the research question that you're asking.
Yes.
The methodology also will shape or dictate the outcomes of your research study. So you need to be very clear about what your question is, and you need to be very clear about what your outcomes are that you're hoping to achieve in order to actually meet the aim of your research study. So in that initial setup stage, when you're thinking about the aim of your study, the overall aim, and your research question, the natural thought process then needs to be, what type of outcomes do I want? And then I need to think about the methodology that I need to choose.
Thank you very much for that.
That's all right. Jennifer, thank you for your time today.
Much clearer. Thank you.